I'm Joshua, 27 years old, and my own brother invited me to a luxury dinner only to humiliate me by seating me at the literal kids' table. Before I tell you about how I ended up becoming his boss and holding his multi-million-dollar campaign in my hands, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. The rain was coming down in sheets that evening in Portland, Oregon. It was the kind of cold, biting drizzle that seeped right into your bones. But sitting in my car, waiting for the valet outside of Clear Water, I actually felt a rare spark of genuine warmth. Clear Water wasn't just any restaurant. It was the kind of establishment where you had to know somebody who knew somebody just to get a reservation on a Saturday night. It sat right on the edge of the Willamette River, boasting floor-to-ceiling glass windows, imported mahogany floors, and a menu where a single steak cost more than my weekly grocery budget. My older brother, Matthew, had rented out a private section for what he called a major family celebration. He had been incredibly vague about the details in the family group chat, only insisting that it was a mandatory, black-tie optional event. I had spent an hour agonizing over what to wear, finally settling on a sharp navy blazer and a crisp white shirt. On my way there, I had stopped at a boutique wine shop in the Pearl District and dropped $150 on a bottle of vintage Pinot Noir. I wanted to show my family that I was doing well. I wanted to contribute. I wanted to be seen as an equal. For the past 4 years, ever since I chose to focus on my career as a graphic designer instead of rushing into marriage and fatherhood like my brothers did, I had been the family afterthought. The perpetual single guy. The one who apparently didn't count as a real, functioning adult because there wasn't a wedding ring on my finger. Matthew is 35, married to Chloe, and they have 3 kids. My second brother, Elijah, is 32, married to his wife Sarah, with 2 kids of his own. And then there's me, the baby of the family, the bachelor, the guy whose time and money were always viewed as expendable community property by the rest of them. I handed my keys to the valet, grabbed the heavy, expensive bottle of wine, and walked through the massive oak double doors. The host, a man in a perfectly tailored suit, smiled politely. "Good evening, sir. Do you have a reservation?" "I'm with the Matthew Sullivan party," I said. "Private dining." "Ah, yes. Right this way, sir." I followed him past the main dining room, which was humming with the low, sophisticated murmur of Portland's elite. We turned down a dimly lit, carpeted hallway and approached a set of heavy sliding doors. The host pulled them open, and the sound of my family's loud, booming laughter spilled out into the corridor. I walked in, a smile already forming on my face. But as I took in the layout of the room, my steps slowed. My smile froze. There were 2 tables set up in the private room. The first one was a massive, elegant, round mahogany table positioned perfectly by the glass windows overlooking the river. It was a masterpiece of fine dining. Heavy silver cutlery gleamed under the warm chandelier light. Crystal wine glasses caught the reflection of a beautiful, towering floral centerpiece. My parents, Robert and Martha, were already sitting there. Matthew and Chloe were seated next to them. Elijah and Sarah took up the remaining side. They were laughing, clinking expensive artisan cocktails, looking like an advertisement for the perfect, successful American family. Then I looked at the second table. It was shoved into the far corner of the room, uncomfortably close to the swinging kitchen doors where the waitstaff rushed in and out. It wasn't even a real restaurant table. It was a flimsy, plastic folding table, the kind you buy at a hardware store for a backyard barbecue. It was covered in a cheap, loud paper tablecloth printed with cartoon dinosaurs. A little plastic cup filled with broken, primary-colored crayons sat in the middle of it. Matthew's daughters, Emma and Sophie, and Elijah's son, Tyler, were sitting on mismatched chairs, already scribbling on the paper, completely oblivious to the setting. I stood there in the doorway, the heavy glass of the wine bottle pressing into my palm. My brain struggled to process what I was seeing. I looked at the adult table again. I counted the chairs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Exactly 6 chairs. There wasn't an empty seat waiting for me. There wasn't a place setting with my name on it. Matthew looked up mid-laugh and saw me standing there. He waved me over, a wide, easy, completely unashamed smile on his face. "Hey, Joshua, you made it, man," he called out loudly, his voice echoing off the glass windows. I walked over slowly, my eyes flicked between his smiling face, the $150 bottle of wine in my hand, and the dinosaur tablecloth in the dark corner of the room. "Matthew," I said. My voice was completely flat, devoid of any emotion. "Are you joking right now?" Matthew's smile tightened just a fraction, a brief flash of annoyance crossing his eyes, but he kept up the cheerful, big brother facade. "It's just easier this way, man. You know how it is. The kids need supervision. They get rowdy in nice places like this, and we don't want them breaking anything. Plus, you're so good with them." I stared at him. I could feel the heat rising in my neck. "I'm 27 years old, Matthew. I'm a professional. I'm not your free babysitter." Elijah, swirling a glass of amber liquid that probably cost $50 a pour, rolled his eyes from across the table. "Don't be dramatic, Josh. It's one dinner. You don't have a wife to sit next to anyway." "It's practical, Joshua," my mother chimed in, adjusting her pearl necklace but noticeably refusing to meet my eyes. She looked down at her pristine white napkin. "Matthew and Chloe have some very exciting news to share tonight, and we want to be able to hear each other. Adult stuff, family planning. You understand." I understood perfectly. I understood that despite having my own apartment, managing my own bills, and building a successful career, my family still saw me as a second-class citizen. Because I hadn't followed their approved life script, because I hadn't provided them with grandchildren or a daughter-in-law to gossip with, I was quite literally relegated to the kids' table. I looked at my dad. He didn't even look up from his phone, scrolling through his emails as if this blatant disrespect was just the weather. Chloe, Matthew's wife, looked down at her lap, her cheeks slightly flushed. She knew it was wrong. I could see the guilt radiating off her. But she wasn't going to cross her husband. None of them were. A heavy, cold feeling settled in my chest. It wasn't explosive anger. I didn't want to yell. It was total, crystal clear clarity. I saw exactly where I stood in their hierarchy. "Sure," I said. My voice was light, almost too light. "No problem at all." Matthew looked relieved, his chest puffing out slightly as he reclaimed his dominance. "Awesome. I knew you'd get it. You're a team player, Josh." I didn't reply. I walked over to the corner table. I set the vintage Pinot Noir down right next to a bright red crayon. Emma, my 6-year-old niece, looked up at me with a toothy, innocent grin. "Uncle Josh, are you eating with us?" "Looks like it, kiddo," I said, pulling out a tiny, rickety wooden chair and sitting down. My knees practically hit the underside of the plastic table. A server in a crisp white uniform walked over to the adult table holding a bottle of champagne on ice. I could hear the loud, festive pop of the cork. Matthew stood up, raising his crystal glass high in the air. "To family," he announced loudly, making sure his voice carried across the room. "And to baby number 4 on the way." Cheers erupted. My mother squealed with delight, clapping her hands. My dad finally looked up from his phone to pat Matthew on the shoulder. Elijah raised his glass in a toast. Not a single one of them looked over to my corner. Not one of them asked if I wanted a glass to toast my own brother. I was entirely invisible. Emma tugged on my sleeve, her brow furrowed. "Why are the grown-ups so loud, Uncle Josh?" I looked down at her, forcing a gentle smile for her sake. "Because sometimes, Emma, grown-ups are really stupid." Sitting there, listening to them celebrate a life milestone while actively pretending I didn't exist, a switch flipped deep inside my head. I realized I was done playing the good, accommodating little brother. I was done begging for scraps of respect. And what I did next started a family war I never saw coming. About 20 minutes later, the kitchen doors swung open, and a small army of waitstaff brought out the food. The contrast was almost comical if it hadn't been so insulting. The adult table was served an absolute feast. There were plates of perfectly seared jumbo scallops, thick cuts of filet mignon resting on beds of garlic puree, and a massive, towering seafood platter dripping with condensation, packed with oysters and crab legs. The smell of truffle oil and expensive butter filled the room. Then, a young waitress walked over to our dark little corner. Her name tag read Jennifer. She was carrying a large plastic tray. Carefully, she set down 3 small plastic baskets in front of the kids, filled with greasy, frozen section chicken fingers and soggy French fries. Then she paused. She looked at me, sitting there in my tailored navy blazer, my knees jammed under the dinosaur tablecloth. She gently placed the 4th basket of fries and a tiny cup of mac and cheese right in front of me. She didn't say a word, but she gave me a look of deep, profound pity. It was the kind of look you give a stray dog in the rain. "Enjoy," Jennifer whispered softly, her eyes full of sympathetic apology. I stared down at the sad, beige food. I hadn't ordered this. I hadn't been given a menu. Matthew had simply pre-ordered the kids' meals and assumed I would eat whatever garbage was put in front of me because my presence was just a logistical necessity for child-minding. The noise from the adult table drifted over, loud and boastful. My mother was gushing about how Matthew was already setting up a college fund for the new baby. My dad was asking Elijah about his recent stock investments. Then, the conversation shifted to a funeral they had recently attended for a distant great-uncle. "It really makes you think," my mother said, her voice dripping with artificial sentimentality. "At the end of the day, when all is said and done, family is all you have. Family is the only thing that matters." I almost laughed out loud at the hypocrisy. Family is all you have unless you're the youngest son who doesn't have a wife, in which case you sit by the kitchen doors and eat chicken fingers. As I sat there pushing a cold fry around my plastic plate, my mind flashed back to just 3 months ago. I had busted my back working late nights and weekends, and I had finally gotten a major promotion at my firm, stepping up to senior designer. It was a huge milestone for me. I was so proud. I had texted the family group chat a picture of my new office with the plaque on the door. Matthew had replied with a single thumbs-up emoji. Elijah had typed a lowercase "cool." My parents never even responded to the text. When I brought it up at our mandatory Sunday dinner a week later, hoping for a toast or even just a pat on the back, my mom had said, "That's nice, honey," and immediately pivoted to talking about Elijah's toddler learning to use the potty. They simply did not care about my life. They only cared about my utility to them. I pulled out my phone and checked my banking app. I had a healthy savings account, a great credit score, and no debt. I knew exactly how these luxury family dinners worked. I had been trapped in them before. At the end of the night, when the bill arrived, Matthew would magnanimously pull out his calculator app. He would offer to split the bill evenly among the working adults. He had done it on his birthday last year. I had eaten a side salad and drank water. He had ordered a $90 steak and 3 cocktails. And yet, he had demanded I chip in $150 for my fair share. I wasn't doing it. Not tonight. Not ever again. I caught Jennifer's eye as she walked out of the kitchen doors, holding a pitcher of water. I raised my hand slightly, motioning her over. "Hi," I said quietly, leaning in so the adult table wouldn't hear me over their own laughter. "I need a massive favor. I need to settle my portion of the bill right now, completely separate from the main party. Just my tap water and this basket of chicken fingers that I didn't order. I'm leaving." Jennifer didn't even blink. She completely understood the dynamic at play. She had probably seen 100 dysfunctional wealthy families in this restaurant. "Absolutely, sir. Give me 2 minutes." She came back quickly and discreetly, sliding a black leather folder onto the dinosaur tablecloth. The bill for my water and the kids' meal was $32. I pulled out a crisp $50 bill and laid it inside, then grabbed a pen and wrote in an additional $40 tip on my credit card receipt. "Sir, you really don't have to do that," Jennifer whispered, her eyes widening as she looked at the tip amount. "I know," I said, offering her a genuine smile. "But you've been kind, and I appreciate it. Have a great night." I stood up. I didn't make a scene. I didn't grab my wine bottle back. I leaned down and patted my nephew Tyler on the head. Be good, guys. Uncle Josh has to go take care of some things. Bye, Uncle Josh, the kids chorused, already going back to their coloring. I picked up my coat from the back of the tiny chair. I didn't walk over to the adult table. I didn't interrupt their conversation about college funds and inheritances. I didn't say goodbye. I just turned my back on them, pushed open the heavy wooden doors of the private room, and walked out of clear water into the cool, rainy Portland night. The moment the valet brought my car around and I slipped into the driver's seat, my chest felt incredibly light. The heavy, suffocating weight of constantly trying to earn their respect, of twisting myself into knots to be a good son and a good brother, was suddenly gone. I didn't need it anymore. I was free. I was about halfway home, the windshield wipers slicing rhythmically back and forth, when my phone started vibrating in the cup holder. It buzzed once, then twice. Then it started going off like an alarm bell. I pulled into my apartment complex's underground parking garage, shifted into park, and finally picked up the phone. I had 32 unread messages and 4 missed calls. The family group chat was in absolute meltdown mode. Matthew, 8:45 p.m., where the hell did you go? Did you go to the bathroom or something? Matthew, 8:47 p.m. Joshua, this is incredibly rude. We are in the middle of a celebration dinner. Come back right now. Mom, 8:50 p.m. Joshua David, where are you? You are worrying me to death. Answer your phone. Elijah, 8:55 p.m. Dude. Really? Walking out? Grow up. You're throwing a tantrum over a chair? Matthew, 9:02 p.m. You're seriously going to ruin my night over a seating arrangement? Unbelievable. You're acting like a child. Answer your phone. I sat in the quiet, dim light of my car, the engine ticking as it cooled down. I read the messages twice. They weren't worried about my safety. They were annoyed that I had broken their perfect, picturesque illusion. They were furious that the free babysitter had walked off the job and left them to deal with their own children while they tried to eat scallops. I opened the keyboard. I didn't write a paragraph explaining my feelings. They wouldn't care anyway. I typed out one single, definitive message. I'm fine. I left because I have actual adult things to handle. Enjoy your dinner. I hit send. Then I held down the power button and turned my phone completely off. I walked up to my apartment, poured myself a glass of bourbon, and went to sleep, sleeping better than I had in months. I thought the worst was over. I thought walking out was the end of it. I had no idea my brother was about to try and hit me where it actually hurts. My bank account. The next morning, I woke up with a clear head, a mild caffeine craving, and 0 regrets. I went to work at Brightridge Media, the mid-sized marketing firm where I had been grinding away for the last 5 years. I was good at my job, but lately, the agency felt stagnant. I was churning out campaigns, but upper management was stuck in their ways, refusing to innovate. It felt a bit like my family dynamic, giving everything and getting the bare minimum in return. Around noon, the rain had stopped, so I stepped out to grab a coffee at a high-end cafe down the street. While I was waiting for my espresso, I heard a familiar voice. Joshua, oh my God, is that you? I turned around and practically got tackled by Patricia, an old college friend. She was wearing a sharp designer pantsuit and holding a massive binder. Patricia worked as a headhunter for executive roles in the creative industry. We caught up for a few minutes before her eyes lit up with professional calculation. I was literally just looking at your LinkedIn profile yesterday, she said, lowering her voice conspiratorially. Word around the industry is that you're doing killer, award-level work over at Brightridge. Listen, I have a massive client, Clovian Media. Have you heard of them? Had I heard of them? Clovian Media was one of the most prestigious, aggressive, and successful agencies on the West Coast. They are desperate for a fresh creative director, Patricia continued. Their last guy burnt out. The salary is insane, Josh. We're talking top-of-market base, plus performance bonuses. You'd be running an entire department, total creative control. Are you interested? I didn't even hesitate. Send me the details. I'll have my updated portfolio to you by tonight. 2 days later, I was sitting in a freezing, glass-walled conference room on the top floor of a downtown Portland skyscraper, pitching my creative vision to the CEO of Clovian Media, Mr. Carter. Carter was a legend in the industry, a silver-haired, no-nonsense guy who valued pure results over office politics. For 2 hours, he grilled me. He asked brutal questions about market saturation, brand identity, and leadership under pressure. I didn't flinch. I answered with cold, hard data and showcased my best campaigns. He looked at my portfolio in silence for a long, agonizing minute. Then he closed the leather binder, looked me dead in the eye, and offered me the job on the spot. The salary was astronomical. $60,000 more than my current base pay. It included aggressive profit sharing, full executive benefits, and a massive budget to hire my own creative team. I walked out of that building feeling like I owned the entire city. That evening, I posted a professional update on LinkedIn and a quick, happy photo on Instagram announcing my new role as creative director at Clovian Media. Within an hour, my phone was buzzing relentlessly. I had hundreds of likes, comments, and messages from industry peers, old college buddies, and former coworkers offering their congratulations. I scrolled through the notifications, looking for familiar names. From my family, absolute silence. Crickets. Not a single like. Not a text. Not a call. They were still punishing me for ruining Matthew's dinner. I told myself I didn't care. I went out and celebrated with my best friend, David, buying a round of expensive beers and talking about the future. But reality has a funny, brutal way of interrupting a good time. On Thursday afternoon, while I was packing up my desk at Brightridge, my phone rang. It was an unknown local number. "Hello, is this Joshua?" A crisp, intensely professional voice asked. "Speaking." "Hi Joshua. This is Teresa, the general manager at Clearwater Restaurant. I'm calling regarding an outstanding balance from a private event hosted by Matthew Sullivan last Saturday evening." My blood went ice cold. My grip tightened on my phone. "Excuse me?" "Yes, sir. There is an unpaid balance of $843 on the account. The primary credit card Matthew provided to us was declined this morning when we attempted to run the final authorization. He listed you as the secondary contact and financial guarantor for the event. We need to collect payment today, or we will be forced to send this matter to collections." My jaw clenched so hard I thought my teeth would crack. A vein throbbed in my temple. My brother, my own flesh and blood. He had booked an extravagant, ridiculously expensive dinner, ordered top-shelf liquor, fed me frozen chicken fingers at a folding table, and then, knowing his own card would bounce, he had put my name down on the hook for the bill. "Teresa?" I said, forcing my voice to remain incredibly steady, suppressing the urge to scream. I was a guest at that dinner for approximately 30 minutes. I paid my server, Jennifer, $32 in cash and card for exactly what I consumed before I left the premises. I did not sign any contract. I did not authorize my name to be used as a guarantor. I suggest you contact Matthew immediately, or perhaps his parents, to settle their tab. I will not be paying a single cent of that bill. And if Matthew forged my signature on any documents, I will be speaking to a lawyer. Teresa paused. I could hear the furious clicking of a keyboard on her end. "I understand, sir. I see the $32 transaction recorded here under your table. I apologize for the confusion. We will pursue the primary account holder directly. Have a good day." I hung up the phone. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from a white-hot, blinding rage. I didn't call Matthew privately. I wanted an audience. I opened the family group chat. "Joshua, Clearwater Management just called me trying to collect $843 for your luxury dinner. Matthew, do not ever put my name down as a financial contact for your expenses again. I paid for my chicken fingers before I left. The rest of your champagne bill is your problem. Deal with it." The response was almost instantaneous. The little typing bubbles danced across the screen frantically. "Matthew, are you serious right now? You're refusing to help pay for a family dinner?" My card got a fraud lock on it from a weird purchase. I just needed someone to cover it until Tuesday. Don't be a jerk. Joshua. A family dinner where I was seated with a 6-year-old on a plastic tablecloth? No, I don't subsidize disrespect. Pay your own bills. Elijah typed next, stepping in to defend his older brother. Dude, you're 27 and single. You don't have kids to feed. You have plenty of disposable income. Where exactly did you expect to sit anyway? Stop being cheap and help your brother out. He's stressed enough as it is. They actually expected me to subsidize their extravagant lifestyle just because I was single. They viewed my bank account as an emergency fund for their poor financial decisions. But they forgot one crucial thing. I wasn't a defenseless, desperate kid anymore. I was a man with a backbone, and I was about to drop a bomb that would ruin their precious holiday season and shatter their illusion of control. The group chat exploded in a flurry of toxic notifications after Elijah's message. My mother, who had been completely silent about my new job, immediately jumped in to run defense for her golden boys. Mom, Joshua David, this behavior is absolutely unacceptable. Family helps family. That is how we operate. Your brother has 3 mouths to feed and a 4th on the way. You have no responsibilities. You live alone. Just call the restaurant, pay the bill, and Matthew will pay you back when he can. Stop being so selfish. I stared at the glowing screen of my phone, a bitter laugh escaping my throat. No responsibilities. That was the crux of it all. That's how they viewed my entire existence. My career, my home, my mental health, my life. None of it counted as a responsibility in their eyes because it didn't involve a minivan, a mortgage in the suburbs, and a PDA meeting. Joshua. No. I hit send, threw my phone face down on the couch, and walked into the kitchen to pour a glass of water. My phone rang less than a minute later. It was my mother. I let it ring. It stopped, then immediately started ringing again. Finally, knowing she would just escalate if I ignored her, I picked it up. Joshua David? She snapped the moment the line connected, her voice shrill and trembling with indignation. You are embarrassing this family. The restaurant manager just called your father because Matthew's card is locked. Your father had to give them his credit card to settle the bill. Do you have any idea how humiliating that is for a man of his age? It's probably as humiliating as being a 27-year-old professional forced to color in a dinosaur menu while his family drinks champagne 10 feet away, I replied coldly, leaning against the kitchen counter. You are holding on to a ridiculous, childish grudge over a chair, she yelled, losing her temper. Thanksgiving is in 3 weeks. You are going to come home, you are going to apologize to Matthew for causing this drama, and we will put this behind us like a family. I'm not coming to Thanksgiving, Mom. The line went dead silent. You could have heard a pin drop. Thanksgiving was the holy grail of my mother's year. It was the time she paraded her family around to the extended relatives, taking perfect photos for Facebook. Missing it was practically a cardinal sin. Excuse me? She whispered, her voice dangerous. You heard me, I said, my voice rock steady. I'm not coming. I am not going to sit in your house, eat dry turkey, and let you and my brothers treat me like a walking ATM and an unpaid nanny. In fact, I'm taking the week off and flying to Hawaii. I need a vacation. Have a great dinner. Tell Matthew to make sure the kids don't choke on the wishbone. I hung up the phone and blocked her number temporarily before she could start crying or screaming. The next day, utilizing the generous signing bonus from Clovian Media, I booked a non-refundable, first-class ticket to Maui. I rented a beautiful, modern condo right on the water in Kihei. For the first time in my life, I was spending my hard-earned money on myself, instead of hoarding it to buy extravagant Christmas gifts in a pathetic attempt to buy my family's affection. The week of Thanksgiving arrived. While my family was likely shivering in the freezing Portland rain, arguing over who was going to carve the turkey, I was lying on a pristine white beach chair in Maui. The sun was beating down, warming my skin, and I was listening to the rhythmic crash of the waves against the shore with a cold drink in my hand. My phone had been relatively quiet. I had unblocked my parents, but I hadn't received anything other than a few passive-aggressive links from my mom about forgiveness and the dangers of isolation. Then, on Thursday afternoon, an unknown local number popped up on my screen. I usually let those go to voicemail, but I was relaxed enough and slightly curious enough to take a chance. Hello, Josh? Hey, it's Chloe, Matthew's wife. I sat up slightly, pulling down my sunglasses, instantly on high alert. Hey, Chloe, everything okay? Is someone hurt? She sighed. It was a heavy, rattling sound that transmitted through the phone. Chloe sounded exhausted, like a woman who was carrying the weight of the world and was one bad argument away from calling a lawyer to discuss a divorce. No, everyone is physically fine. I'm sorry to bother you on your trip. I saw your Instagram stories. Maui looks absolutely beautiful. It is, I said cautiously. What's going on, Chloe? I called to apologize, she said quietly, her voice trembling. For the dinner, for the kids' table. I told Matthew it was a terrible idea before we even got to the restaurant. I begged him not to do it, but you know how he is, Josh. He wanted to feel like the big man. He wanted to show off to your parents that he was the head of the adults, and he used you to do it because you're the youngest. I was stunned. In the 7 years she had been married to my brother, Chloe had never spoken out against him to me. She was always the dutiful, quiet wife. And the bill? I asked, needing to hear the truth. He knew his card was maxed out, she confessed, her voice breaking a little. She sounded like she was crying. He has terrible credit right now. He's stressed about money with the new baby coming. He was banking on you just paying it to avoid a scene, like you always do when he pushes you into a corner. He's terrified of failing, and he takes it out on you. Josh, I'm so sorry. The way they treat you, it's just not right. I just wanted you to know that at least one person in this family sees it. And I'm proud of your new job. I leaned back in my chair, looking out at the endless blue horizon. A massive wave of validation washed over me. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't overreacting. Thank you, Chloe, I said softly. That actually means a lot to me. Take care of yourself and the kids. Maui was exactly the healing experience I needed. I returned to Portland refreshed, focused, and ready to dominate my new role. But while I was sipping drinks on the beach, the gears of fate at my new firm were turning. And destiny was about to put Matthew right in my crosshairs in a way neither of us could have ever predicted. By late January, I was firing on all cylinders at Clovian Media. The environment was intense, but it was a pure meritocracy. My team was producing aggressive, award-winning work, our client retention was at an all-time high, and Mr. Carter, the CEO, had taken a personal interest in mentoring me. He saw my drive, and he threw resources at me to see what I could build. On a rainy, bleak Tuesday afternoon, Carter called me into his massive corner office. Joshua, sit down, he said, skipping the small talk and tapping a thick, sealed manila folder on his mahogany desk. We just got a bite from a massive fish, Evergreen Logistics. They are a national shipping giant, and they're doing a total corporate rebrand. The initial contract is worth $500,000, with the potential for millions more in retainer fees. If we land this, I'm moving you from creative director to a full partner in the firm. Your name on the letterhead. Partner. 28 years old. My heart hammered violently against my ribs, but I kept my face totally neutral, projecting absolute confidence. I want the pitch. Give me a week. I worked 80 hours that week. I barely slept, living off black coffee and adrenaline. I poured every ounce of creativity, market strategy, and consumer research I had into building a campaign that was absolutely bulletproof. I knew every metric, every demographic, every financial projection. The day of the pitch arrived. I wore a tailored charcoal suit that cost more than my first car, a crisp white shirt, and a deep red tie. I looked like a man who commanded millions. Mr. Carter and I walked into the massive glass and steel headquarters of Evergreen Logistics in downtown Portland, moving with purpose. A polished receptionist led us into a sprawling executive boardroom on the 40th floor. A long, beautiful oak table stretched across the room, surrounded by executives in expensive suits holding leather portfolios. "Gentlemen, thank you for coming," the CEO of Evergreen said, standing up and shaking Mr. Carter's hand warmly. "Allow me to introduce my senior team. This is our VP of Marketing, our Chief Financial Officer, and our newly appointed Director of Operations, who will be overseeing the logistical rollout of whatever campaign we choose." The man sitting at the end of the table, whose back had been turned as he poured a glass of water, slowly spun his leather chair around. It was Matthew. The blood drained from Matthew's face so fast he looked like he was going to pass out. The glass pitcher of water in his hand trembled, water sloshing over the rim onto the polished table. His eyes widened, darting frantically from Mr. Carter to me, taking in my expensive tailored suit, my confident posture, and the thick leather presentation portfolio under my arm. He had just started at Evergreen last month. I had no idea. My mother hadn't updated me because we weren't speaking, and clearly, Matthew had no idea that Clovian Media was the agency pitching for the massive rebrand. For a split second, pure, unadulterated panic flashed in his eyes. He looked trapped. Then, deeply ingrained habit and the old arrogant Matthew kicked in. His fragile ego couldn't handle the dynamic shift. He puffed out his chest, leaning back in his chair with a patronizing, forced smirk, desperately trying to regain control of the room and reassert his dominance as the older brother. "Well," Matthew chuckled loudly, awkwardly interrupting his own CEO, "I didn't realize Clovian Media sent junior staff to handle the big accounts. Mr. Carter, this is my little brother, Josh. He does some drawing and stuff on computers. Nice to see you, kiddo. Try to keep up today, all right?" The room went dead silent. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. The Evergreen executives looked deeply uncomfortable, glancing at their CEO, confused by the blatant lack of professionalism. I didn't flinch. I didn't get angry. My jaw didn't even clench. I just looked at him with absolute, freezing, terrifying calm. Before I could even open my mouth to speak, Mr. Carter stepped forward. He didn't yell, but his voice was like grinding steel. "Director," Mr. Carter said, his tone dripping with professional menace and unquestionable authority. "This is Joshua. He is not junior staff. He is the incoming creative partner of my firm, the lead strategist on this account, and the only reason Clovian Media is sitting at this table today. Every single decision regarding this $500,000 campaign begins and ends with him. Now, if you are quite finished disrespecting my partner, we have a highly lucrative presentation to give." Matthew's smirk vanished instantly, wiped away by the sheer force of Carter's rebuke. His jaw literally dropped. He swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing violently. He looked like a man who had just stepped on a landmine, heard the click, and realized nobody was coming to save him. I walked to the head of the table. I plugged my laptop into the projector. I didn't look at Matthew again. I didn't need to. For the next 45 minutes, I owned that room. I delivered a pitch so airtight, so financially brilliant, and so creatively dominant, that by the time I clicked to the final slide, the Evergreen CEO was nodding vigorously, practically ready to sign the contract right then and there. "Brilliant," the CEO said, clapping his hands together. "Absolutely brilliant, Joshua. The data is flawless. I think we have a deal. Director Sullivan, you'll be working closely with Joshua's team for the next 6 months." I shook the CEO's hand. As we packed up to leave, I finally let my eyes meet Matthew's. He was staring at me, his face pale, his hands trembling slightly on top of the mahogany table. He realized, in that exact moment, the sheer scale of his mistake. He had spent years treating me like dirt, shoving me at a kid's table, and trying to stick me with his bills. And I had just walked into his company, asserted absolute dominance over a project that could make or break his new job, and he was powerless to stop it. This is a moment that changed everything, when I finally regained control of my life. Thank you for your patience in getting this far. You are amazing. Please like the video and leave a comment below to let me know you've been with me. This will not only help more people find this story, but also let me know that my experiences are meaningful to someone. Your support is the biggest motivation for me to continue sharing the rest of this journey." Matthew looked like he wanted the floor to swallow him whole. I had won. The power dynamic had permanently shifted. But the fallout from that boardroom was going to echo through our family for months to come. As Mr. Carter and I walked out of the boardroom and toward the glass elevators, the adrenaline was still humming through my veins. The pitch had been flawless. Carter clapped me on the shoulder, a rare, genuine smile on his face, signaling that the partner promotion was locked in. Just as Carter reached out to press the call button, I heard hurried, scuffing footsteps echoing down the marble hallway behind us. "Josh! Hey, Joshua, wait up!" It was Matthew. He was practically jogging to catch us. His face flushed red and a thin sheen of sweat on his forehead. He looked completely unraveled. Mr. Carter shot me a questioning look, raising an eyebrow. I just gave a subtle nod, signaling I could handle it. Carter stepped into the waiting elevator. "I'll see you back at the office, partner," he said loudly, making sure the word echoed, before letting the doors slide shut. I turned to face my brother. The patronizing smirk, the arrogant posture. It was all completely gone. In its place was a look of desperate, awkward panic. "Hey, man," Matthew stammered, shoving his hands deep into his pockets and shifting his weight from foot to foot. "Listen, wow, that was a hell of a presentation. The CEO loved it. I had no idea you were, partner? Clovian? When the hell did that happen?" "Recently," I said flatly, keeping my posture rigid. I didn't offer any details. I didn't smile. I didn't give him an inch. Right. That's huge, Josh. Really huge." He ran a hand through his hair, looking around the empty hallway as if checking to see if anyone was listening. "Look, about what I said in there. Before the pitch. I was just messing around. You know me, always joking. Listen, why don't we get together? Just you and me. Let me take you out to a real dinner. A nice place. A real adult dinner, right? My treat this time. We can talk about the project." I looked at him, studying his face. I saw the desperate calculation in his eyes. He wasn't proud of me. He wasn't happy for his little brother's success. He was absolutely terrified. He knew that Evergreen Logistics was my client now, which meant his entire department, his new high-paying job, had to answer to my strategies and my timelines. He was trying to buy insurance. He was trying to smooth things over so I wouldn't make his life a living hell at work. "No thanks, Matthew," I said. My voice was calm, completely devoid of anger, which seemed to scare him even more. "I don't think that's a good idea. Let's just keep it strictly professional. I'll see you at the official kickoff meeting next week." I turned away and pressed the elevator button. "Josh, come on." His voice took on that whiny, defensive tone he always used with our parents when he didn't get his way. "Don't hold a grudge over stupid stuff. Mom is losing her mind. Christmas is next month. Just come home for the holidays. We'll make sure you get a seat right next to Dad. We can forget all this." "I'm spending Christmas in Seattle with David's family," I replied smoothly as the elevator arrived with a soft ding. I stepped inside and turned around. "Tell Mom I said Merry Christmas." The doors closed on his stunned, pale face. December arrived, blanketing Portland in a layer of frost. The holidays, which used to be a source of massive anxiety, guilt trips, and financial drain for me, felt entirely different this year. I didn't spend hours agonizing over what expensive gifts to buy my siblings to prove my worth. I didn't brace myself for the inevitable passive-aggressive comments about my relationship status or my career. Instead, I packed my bags, drove up the I-5 to Seattle, and spent a week with my best friend David and his family. They welcomed me with open arms. We drank hot cocoa, ate massive dinners at a large, inclusive table where everyone had a seat, watched terrible holiday movies, and laughed until our ribs ached. David's parents asked me about my new promotion with genuine, warm interest. They treated me like a successful adult. They treated me like I mattered. On Christmas morning, I took a group photo with David's family in front of their massive, brightly lit tree. I was smiling genuinely. I posted it on Facebook with the caption, "Grateful for chosen family. Best Christmas ever." An hour later, my phone rang. It was my mother. I let it go to voicemail. She left a frantic, 3-minute message. Her voice was trembling, oscillating wildly between deep, weeping sorrow and desperate anger. She had seen the photo. She tried to guilt-trip me, bringing up family loyalty and legacy. She even tried a new tactic, explicitly threatening my future inheritance. She stated she was going to call a lawyer after the holidays to reevaluate the will if I continued to abandon my blood. I listened to the voicemail while drinking a cup of premium coffee in David's kitchen. I didn't feel angry anymore. I just felt a profound, heavy sense of closure. If she wanted to use money as a weapon to control me, she could leave it all to Matthew's kids. I was making my own money now. I was building my own life on my own terms. I didn't call her back. I didn't argue. I just deleted the voicemail and let the silence speak for itself. I had built a new life, a chosen family. I was finally at peace. The storm had passed, and I had emerged stronger. But just when I thought the book was closed on my blood relatives forever, a notification popped up on my phone a few weeks later that would change everything I thought I knew about my brother's motivations. The winter months slowly melted into a rainy, green Portland spring. During that time, a strange and unspoken dynamic developed between me and my brother Matthew. Our professional lives were now permanently intertwined through the Evergreen Logistics account. Every Tuesday morning, I sat at the head of a massive conference table, and Matthew sat halfway down the side, taking notes on the strategies my team presented. I never rubbed it in his face. I never made a passive-aggressive comment. I didn't treat him the way he had treated me at that disastrous dinner. I treated him with strict, unwavering, cold professionalism. I evaluated his logistical timelines. I approved his departmental budgets based on my campaign needs. I spoke to him the same way I spoke to any other corporate vendor. And honestly, I think that absolute professionalism broke him down far more than any screaming match ever could. He saw the respect I commanded in that boardroom. He saw executives decades older than me hanging on to my every word. He saw the reality of the man I had become, stripped of the little brother label he had always used to diminish me. Outside of work, the family remained completely fractured. My mother had stopped calling after her threats regarding the inheritance failed to move me. I hadn't seen my father or my second brother, Elijah, in over 6 months. I was spending my weekends hiking in the Columbia River Gorge, taking weekend trips to the coast, and building a life entirely independent of their approval. My salary allowed me to live comfortably, and my mind was finally quiet. Then, on a quiet Thursday evening in late April, I was sitting on the balcony of my condo, watching the city lights flicker to life against the darkening sky. My laptop chimed from the kitchen island. I walked over, expecting a late-night brief from Mr. Carter. Instead, I saw a personal email from an address I hadn't interacted with outside of the corporate server in half a year. It was from Matthew. The subject line was simple: "I am sorry. No conditions. No excuses." I stared at the screen for a long time before I clicked open the message. I took a deep breath, bracing myself for another manipulative attempt to bring me back into the fold so they could save face. But what I read fundamentally changed the trajectory of our entire family. "Joshua," the email began, "I have spent the last 6 months watching you operate at work. I've watched you lead a team, command respect, and handle incredible pressure with a grace I do not possess. And every single time I see you, I feel a sickening amount of shame for what I did to you at Clearwater, and for how I have treated you for the last 5 years. I am writing this because I owe you the absolute, unvarnished truth. The truth is, I was incredibly, bitterly jealous of you. You looked at the life script Mom and Dad handed us: get a corporate job, marry early, buy a house, have kids immediately, and you said no. You chose your own path. You chose freedom. You chose to build your career on your own terms. Meanwhile, I did exactly what was expected of me. And the truth is, Josh, I have been drowning. My salary, even with the new job, barely covers the mortgage and the kids' college fund. Chloe and I were sleeping in separate bedrooms for months because the financial stress turned us into enemies. We were dangerously close to a divorce. I felt like a failure every single day because I couldn't effortlessly maintain the perfect, golden boy image everyone expected of me. So, when we had family dinners, I looked at you. You were single, stress-free, building your savings, taking vacations, and living your truth. It made me feel so incredibly small. Instead of dealing with my own insecurities, I decided to punish you for your freedom. I put you at the kids' table to physically remind you that, in my twisted mind, you hadn't earned a seat with the real adults. I tried to stick you with the restaurant bill because I was literally broke. My credit cards were maxed, and my pride wouldn't let me admit to Mom and Dad that I couldn't afford the luxury celebration I had bragged about. I used you to make myself feel bigger. It was cowardly, toxic, and pathetic. You didn't walk away because you were holding a grudge over a chair. You walked away because I treated you like garbage. I am going to therapy now. Chloe and I are working through our issues. I am trying to become a man who actually deserves the respect you naturally command. I am not asking you to forget what happened. I am just asking you to believe me when I say I am deeply, truly sorry. You are a better man than me, Joshua. You always have been. I sat on a stool at my kitchen island, reading the email 3 times. The anger, the heavy resentment I had carried in my chest since that rainy night in September, suddenly evaporated. It wasn't about me. It had never been about me. It was about Matthew's crushing insecurities and the toxic expectations our parents had ingrained in us. I picked up my phone and dialed his number. He answered on the first ring. "Hello?" he said. His voice was thick, guarded. "I got your email," I said quietly. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. I could hear him exhale a shaky breath. "Thank you for reading it. It took a lot of guts to write that, Matt. I appreciate the honesty." "It was the truth," he said, his voice breaking slightly. "I'm so sorry, Josh." "I accept your apology," I said. And the amazing thing was, I really meant it. The conditions of the apology were met. He took full accountability. He didn't say, "I'm sorry you felt that way." He said, "I'm sorry for what I did." That made all the difference in the world. We talked for 2 hours that night. We talked like brothers for the first time since we were teenagers. We talked about his marriage, his financial stress, and the crushing weight of our parents' expectations. Before we hung up, Matthew cleared his throat. "Listen, Josh. Mom and Dad's 40th wedding anniversary is in exactly 1 month. Mom has been a wreck since you stopped talking to her. She won't admit it, but her heart is broken. I want to throw them a surprise anniversary party. A real one. And I want you to help me plan it. I want you to design the event." I hesitated. Getting back into a room with my mother felt like walking back into a minefield. "Matt, I don't know." "You have total control," Matthew interrupted gently. "You pick the venue. You pick the menu. And most importantly, you pick the seating arrangements. I just want our family back in the same room, without the toxic garbage. Please." I looked around my quiet, empty apartment. I had proven my point. I had established my boundaries. Now it was time to see if they could actually respect them. "Okay," I said. "I'll do it. But we do it my way." For the next 4 weeks, I poured my creative energy into planning the anniversary party. I booked a stunning, modern art gallery space in the Pearl District with exposed brick walls and massive skylights. I hired a private chef instead of a stuffy restaurant staff. The night of the party, I arrived 2 hours early to oversee the setup. I stood in the center of the gallery and looked at the masterpiece I had created. There were no separate tables. There was no head of the table. I had rented one massive, magnificent, custom-built circular oak table that seated exactly 12 people. My parents, the 3 brothers, the 2 wives, and the 3 older children. The babies were with a hired nanny in a separate, comfortable playroom. Every single place setting at the massive round table was identical. Crystal glasses, silver chargers, and a handwritten name card for every single person. Emma, my 6-year-old niece, had the exact same elegant place setting as my father. At 6 p.m., Matthew walked my parents through the gallery doors. "Surprise!" we all yelled. My mother gasped, pressing her hands to her mouth. She looked around the beautiful room, the string quartet playing softly in the corner, the soft ambient lighting. Then her eyes landed on me standing by the table. She froze. She hadn't seen me in 8 months. I had filled out a bit. My posture was different. The aura of the anxious youngest child completely gone. "Joshua," she whispered. She walked toward me slowly, as if she was afraid I was an illusion that would vanish if she moved too fast. "Happy anniversary, Mom," I said, offering a small, polite smile. She threw her arms around my neck and hugged me with a desperate, crushing grip. She was crying instantly. "I've missed you so much," she sobbed into my shoulder. "I've missed my boy." I hugged her back, feeling a lump rise in my own throat. When it was time for dinner, everyone naturally gravitated toward the massive circular table. My mother looked at the arrangement. She looked at the single, unified circle where everyone was equal. She saw my name card right next to hers. She saw Matthew's name card next to his daughter Emma's. She stood behind her chair, her hands gripping the wood. She clinked her butter knife against her crystal wine glass. The room fell silent. "Before we sit down," my mother said, her voice shaking but carrying across the gallery. She looked directly at me. "I need to say something. For the last 40 years, I thought I was building a perfect family. I thought if everyone followed the rules, if everyone hit the right milestones at the right time, we would be happy. I was so focused on the image of the family that I completely ignored the actual human beings inside of it." She wiped a tear from her cheek, completely ignoring the expensive makeup she had applied. "Joshua, my beautiful, brilliant youngest son, I am so deeply sorry. I am sorry I didn't celebrate your successes. I am sorry I allowed you to be treated like a second-class citizen in our family because you didn't fit into my neat little boxes. When you walked out of that restaurant, and when you refused to come to Thanksgiving and Christmas, I was furious. But my anger was just a shield for my guilt. You showed more strength and self-respect in walking away from our toxic behavior than I have shown in my entire adult life." She took a deep breath, looking around the circular table. This table, this is what a family should look like. No corners, no hierarchy, just people who love each other exactly as they are. Please, forgive me, Joshua. I am so proud of the man you have become." The entire room was completely silent. Chloe was wiping away tears. Matthew was looking down at his shoes, nodding in agreement. "Thank you, Mom," I said softly, pulling out her chair for her. "Let's eat." As the dinner progressed, the atmosphere was incredibly light. The heavy, suffocating tension that used to define our family gatherings was gone. It felt like a massive storm had finally blown over, leaving fresh, clean air in its wake. Halfway through the main course, my other brother, Elijah, tapped my shoulder. "Hey, come grab a drink with me at the bar." I followed him over to the small marble bar set up in the corner. Elijah looked older. He had dark circles under his eyes, and he had lost some weight. He ordered a club soda with lime, sliding it across the bar to me before getting one for himself. He didn't order alcohol. "I've been sober for 4 months," Elijah said quietly, answering my unspoken question. "Wow, congratulations, man. That's a big deal." "Yeah, well, it was either that or Sarah was going to call a lawyer. We were heading straight for a custody battle over the kids." He gripped his glass tightly. "When you blew up the family chat and walked away, it forced a lot of ugly truths to the surface for all of us. I was so arrogant to you, Josh. I acted like I was superior just because I had a ring and a mortgage. The truth is, I was drinking a fifth of bourbon every 2 days just to deal with the pressure of my own life." He turned to look at me, his eyes filled with raw regret. "I told you to stop throwing a tantrum over a chair. I was an idiot. You were the only one of us actually acting like a man. You stood up for yourself. I'm sorry I piled on. I'm sorry I was a terrible brother." I put my hand on his shoulder and gave it a firm squeeze. "We're good, Elijah. Just focus on your health and your kids. That's all that matters. That night, as I drove back to my condo, I didn't feel the victorious thrill of revenge. I didn't feel like I had conquered my family. I felt a profound, overwhelming sense of peace. The boundaries I had set hadn't destroyed my family. They had saved it. By refusing to accept their disrespect, I had forced them to look in the mirror. We were finally rebuilding, not on a foundation of obligations and guilt, but on a foundation of mutual respect. The dawn of a new era had arrived for the Sullivans, and the universe was about to hand me the ultimate stage to prove exactly who I was. September arrived, marking exactly 1 year since the disastrous dinner at Clearwater. The Evergreen Logistics rebranding campaign officially launched nationwide. It was a massive, undeniable triumph. The bold new visual identity and the aggressive marketing strategy my team had devised took the industry by storm. We were featured in Adweek, Forbes, and the Portland Business Journal. Clovian Media's revenue spiked, and Mr. Carter officially signed the paperwork transferring a percentage of the firm's equity into my name. I was an owner. Because of the massive visibility of the Evergreen campaign, my professional reputation skyrocketed. I wasn't just a local creative director anymore. I was being recognized as an industry disruptor. In early October, I received an email that made me stop dead in my tracks. It was an invitation from the organizers of the National Marketing Leadership Summit, the largest and most prestigious conference in our industry. They wanted me to be their closing keynote speaker. The summit was being held that year right in my backyard, at the massive Oregon Convention Center in downtown Portland. I immediately accepted. A week before the conference, we had our regular Sunday family dinner. This time, it was hosted at my condo. We were all sitting around my kitchen island, eating gourmet pizza and laughing. The dynamic had completely shifted. We actually enjoyed being around each other now. "So," I said, clearing my throat and grabbing another slice of pizza, "I have some news. I've been asked to give the keynote address at the Marketing Leadership Summit next Friday. It's a crowd of about 3,000 industry executives." The kitchen erupted. Matthew dropped his slice of pizza back onto the plate, his eyes wide. "Are you serious? Josh, that's insane. That's the biggest conference on the West Coast. I am so incredibly proud of you," my mother said, beaming, her eyes already shining with happy tears. 3,000 people? Oh my goodness. Do you have tickets? Can we come? A year ago, I would have made up an excuse to keep them away, terrified they would somehow embarrass me or minimize my achievement. Now I looked at them and smiled. I already put VIP passes for the whole family at the will call window. The day of the speech, the energy in the convention center was electric. I stood backstage in the green room, wearing a sharp black suit, listening to the dull roar of the massive crowd taking their seats in the main auditorium. My palms were sweating slightly. This was the biggest moment of my professional life. The stage manager, a young guy with a headset, walked in. "Mr. Sullivan? 5 minutes. You can wait in the wings." I walked out of the green room and stood behind the heavy black velvet curtains at the edge of the stage. The lights in the auditorium dimmed. The massive screens flanking the stage flashed with my name and the Clovian Media logo. The conference host walked up to the podium. "Ladies and gentlemen, our final speaker today is a man who has completely redefined visual strategy in the corporate sector over the last 12 months. He is the youngest creative partner in the history of Clovian Media and the mastermind behind the Evergreen Logistics phenomenon. Please welcome to the stage, Joshua Sullivan." The crowd erupted into heavy, booming applause. I took a deep breath, stepped out from behind the curtain, and walked into the blinding glare of the stage lights. The sheer scale of the room was breathtaking. Thousands of faces, industry leaders, CEOs, and creatives, all looking up at me, waiting to hear what I had to say. I walked to the center of the stage, a wireless microphone clipped to my lapel. I looked out over the sea of people, and there, right in the front row, sitting in the VIP section, was my family. My father was sitting up straight, looking intensely proud. Matthew and Elijah were sitting next to him, both wearing suits, grinning from ear to ear. And right in the middle was my mother, Martha. She was wearing a beautiful emerald green dress. She had both hands pressed over her heart, looking up at me with a level of pure, unadulterated awe and respect that I had spent my entire childhood desperately craving. She wasn't looking at me as a bank account. She wasn't looking at me as an unpaid babysitter. She was looking at a man who had conquered his world. I smiled at her. Then I turned my attention to the crowd. "Thank you," I said, my voice echoing powerfully through the massive speakers. A year ago, I was sitting at a tiny plastic folding table covered in cartoon dinosaurs, eating chicken fingers. A ripple of confused laughter moved through the crowd. "I'm serious," I continued, pacing slowly across the stage. It was a family dinner at a luxury restaurant. And because I didn't fit the traditional mold of success, because I was focused on my career instead of a traditional timeline, I was literally seated at the kids' table. I was 27 years old, a senior designer at an agency, and I was given crayons and told to be quiet while the real adults talked. The auditorium went completely silent. Every single person was hanging on my words. I could see Matthew in the front row, nodding slowly, not shrinking from the story, but acknowledging it. "I could have stayed at that table," I told the crowd. "I could have eaten my chicken fingers, accepted my lot in life, and allowed other people to dictate my value based on their narrow metrics. But I didn't. I paid my bill. I stood up, and I walked out the door." I paused, letting the silence hang in the air for emphasis. In your careers and in your lives, you are going to encounter people who want to put you at the kids' table. Clients who undervalue your expertise. Bosses who dismiss your creative vision because of your age or your background. Friends or family who project their own insecurities onto your ambitions. They will try to hand you a plastic cup and tell you to be grateful you're even in the room. I looked directly into the camera broadcasting my face to the massive screens. The single most important marketing strategy you will ever execute is the marketing of your own self-worth. You have to know the value of your own portfolio before you can convince a client to buy it. You cannot command a premium price tag if you accept discount treatment. If they don't give you a seat at the adult table, you don't throw a tantrum. You simply walk out of the restaurant, build your own table, and invite who you want. Respect is not something you negotiate for. It is a boundary you enforce. The crowd erupted. It started as a low rumble and swelled into a massive, deafening wave of applause. People were standing up. I finished my speech, laying out the technical strategies of the Evergreen campaign, but the emotional core of my message had already done its job. When I finally walked off the stage 45 minutes later, the adrenaline was crashing over me in glorious waves. I walked down the side stairs and into the VIP reception area. My family was waiting for me. My mother didn't say a word. She just walked up to me and threw her arms around my neck, burying her face in my shoulder. She was crying, but they were happy tears. "You were magnificent," she whispered. "Absolutely magnificent." My father shook my hand, pulling me into a rough hug. "Proud of you, son. You knocked it out of the park." Matthew walked up. He didn't look threatened. He looked genuinely inspired. He held out his hand, and when I took it, he pulled me into a real brotherly embrace. "You killed it, Josh. You built your own table." "Thanks, Matt. That means a lot." Later that evening, after the conference ended and the family went home, I walked alone along the waterfront of the Willamette River. I looked across the dark water, spotting the glowing lights of the Clearwater restaurant in the distance. A year ago, I had walked out of those doors feeling completely alone, furious, and fundamentally unvalued. I had been terrified that setting a boundary meant I would lose my family forever. But looking back, I realized the absolute necessity of that painful night. You cannot heal a broken bone without first resetting it, and resetting a bone hurts. Walking away from my family's toxic behavior was the most painful thing I had ever done. Caused chaos, caused anger. It brought up ugly truths about money, inheritance, and ego. But it was the only way to save us. By refusing to be diminished, I forced them to elevate their own behavior. I didn't just demand respect. I commanded it through my actions, my professional success, and my unwavering commitment to my own boundaries. I am Joshua Sullivan. I am 28 years old. I am a partner at a top-tier media firm. I am a son, a brother, and an uncle. But most importantly, I am a man who knows exactly what his seat is worth. And I will never, ever sit at the kids' table again. Joshua's story is not just a career advancement journey, but a profound lesson about self-worth and the art of setting boundaries. In life, sometimes the people closest to us are the ones who unintentionally hurt us with prejudice and hidden jealousy. Joshua being seated at the children's table is a clear metaphor for being devalued and having your voice taken away. The core lesson here is, respect is never a gift bestowed out of pity. It's a standard you must set and resolutely defend. When you're placed in an undeserved position, you don't need to yell or smash things. The greatest power of an adult is the ability to calmly say no, settle your own score, and walk away to focus on building your own table. The sweetest, most educational revenge isn't hurting others, but becoming a brilliant and successful version of yourself that no one can ignore anymore. Furthermore, timely forgiveness, when others have truly realized their mistakes, is the key to mending and saving seemingly broken relationships. Thank you for listening to this entire journey. What detail in Joshua's story resonated with you the most? Please share your thoughts in the comments below, or simply comment "good" to let me know you appreciate the lessons the story offers. Your interaction is a huge motivation for me to continue sharing more meaningful stories